Good morning! Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. Today I want to talk about something that I received a comment in one of my videos, actually in several of my videos. Several people were asking me, what is your background? Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? Blah, 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 blah. Well, the last one touched me, and I'm going to show you the comment that I received. This is one message I received and responded to about 3 weeks ago. It says, I like your videos. Can you tell us about your younger years, career or careers you have had over the years? And this is how I responded. I was thinking about this. However, I feel like providing information that would be helpful to my viewers will be more important than talking about myself. If you disagree, please let me know. I decided, I probably should do something because there is obviously something that makes people curious as to my background, what I used to do, and maybe how I got to where I am today, blah, blah, blah. And this might be an interesting video to present. After all, I have had some challenging time, which I would like to narrate to you. And this is not to brag or anything like that, but just to give you a background of where I had been and where I was headed, that I got where I am today. So, hang loose. I was born in Sampaloc, Manila. To be specific, I was born in Dapitan Street in Sampaloc, Manila. It's walking distance to University of Santo Tomas. I'm going to show you the picture of my grandmother. There it is. She's very Filipina. And here's the picture of my grandfather. She has more or less a Spanish background. And when I was born, I understand my father was a jeepney operator, jeepney driver. He was a jeepney driver for, I understand, a few years, and then he decided to open an auto supply store because he found out that drivers always have problems with their Jeep, it breaks down, and there might be a good demand for automotive business. He eventually ventured into hardware and electrical supplies. He and my mother are very, very hardworking people. When we were going to school, my father would drive us first thing in the morning, pick us up for lunch, and then bring us back to school after lunch, and then pick us back in the afternoon. That's 4 trips a day. He really showed us how much he cared and how important education is. I went to my brother and I talked to him because I was really very interested in science. Do you think I'll be able to make it? Be an engineer like you, my eldest brother, and my next older brother, who's also going for civil engineering. My eldest one is going for electrical engineering. And my brother said to me, you know, if you're really interested in something, you will succeed. You will learn. But you have to have the interest. And then he said, but you know, it's also nice to have a business graduate in the family. My father was convincing my eldest brother to go for business because he was a businessman. He did not. He went for engineering. My second brother, he was also convincing, go for business. Nope, he did not. He went for engineering. And here I am, the third one. I did not have any confidence in me because I failed all my subjects. And I said, what do I know? Am I going to make it in engineering? So my brother said, well, but it's also nice to have a business graduate in the family. So I thought that was a very polite way of him saying, why don't you just go for business? I'll tell you what. I said, number one, I don't have confidence in myself. Number two, my father tried to convince my first 2 brothers to go for business, and they did not. They went for engineering, and he's a businessman, so there's no one to succeed him. And I said, I'll just go for business. So I went for business school, not even knowing or understanding what business is all about. What is this business administration? What is this accounting? Blah, blah, blah. Well, luckily, I became very interested, and in day one, I studied really hard. I kept all my chemistry lab, electronic projects and everything. I put them all in boxes and stored them away. And I said, this time I'm gonna go for it. And I did. Every year after that, I was a medalist, just like my first two brothers. And I graduated high school at the age of 15, and I graduated college at the age of 19. And I graduated with honors in college, which is a complete turnaround. I'm going to show you a picture of the medals that I received, that later in life my wife had it framed and kept it, and I still have it today. An interesting document I'm going to show you is what I call the emancipation document. In the Philippines, at least at the time, I don't know how it is now, you could be emancipated, that means freed from parental authority, when you reach the age of 21. Then you can do anything you want, your parents are no longer responsible for you. When you get married, and then there's a third one, it's called voluntary emancipation. I was interested in law. In fact, that was my fallback plan, is to go for my law degree at the University of the Philippines if I did not make it overseas. And I was very interested in law, and I knew about that, so I started drafting a document, and I had my law professor review it, and he just made a few minor changes, and then I had my parents sign it, and I filed it at the some office at the City Hall in Manila. And I'll show you the document. This document basically emancipated me at the age of 19. And when I went to the City Hall, I had to sit for a while, and the chief came down and was apologetic. He said, I'm so sorry, my son, but we were not familiar with this, and I just want you to know that you are the first one to have ever filed under this provision of the code, which was patterned after that of the Spanish, during the Spanish time. And he was really impressed that I knew about this, and nobody else knew in the office, not even my law professor knew about it. So I was the first one ever emancipated in the Philippines at the age of 19. Otherwise, I would have to either get married or wait until I'm 21. But that's how assertive I was when it comes to these things, even at a young age. And that continued on until my adult life. So now we'll go fast forward. I graduated with honors and earned my bachelor's degree in Letran. I then proceeded to take the CPA exam. I was majoring in accounting at the time. So I then proceeded to review for the CPA exam to get my CPA license. At the same time I was doing that, because I knew my future will be not in the Philippines but overseas, I was applying, and I knew well enough that I should never apply for immigration in the United States, because once you apply, at that time anyway, you cannot apply even for a tourist visa, student visa, or anything like that. So I avoided applying for immigration in the US. By the way, at that time, my brother was already in the Pennsylvania area going for his master's in engineering. So I applied in several schools in the US, several schools in Canada, and I also applied for immigration in Canada. I applied in Australia, and I also applied in Japan. God knows why I applied in Japan. I don't speak Japanese. So anyway, those are the four countries that I applied in. Well, I received two things the same day. I received an approval for me to immigrate to Canada. This is in Toronto. And I also received an admission from the University of Massachusetts to go for my master's degree. Unfortunately, I was not able to get a scholarship or a financing of some sort. Had I gotten a scholarship, I probably would have pursued my MBA, but I did not. I decided I'm going to go to Canada. So I sent a telegram, no emails yet at the time, telegram to my brother that I'm coming, with not much notice, of course, because I was so excited. I'm going to Canada. By the way, my wife, I already met my wife in the Philippines. She was with me in the Philippines, but then she went ahead of me and came to Philadelphia 6 months before I left the Philippines. So I was in the Philippines, and she left for Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, to be specific. And I went to Pennsylvania to visit her first, although my final destination was going to be Canada, because that's where I got my immigration papers at. And my brother offered to pay for my tuition if I want to go to University of Massachusetts, but I really would prefer to be independent. I found a job in 1 month. So there goes my entry into Canada, and I worked there. The job I found was with General Tire and Rubber Company of Canada Limited as an assistant chief accountant. Very low pay, but they have so much discrimination in Canada. I tried to get my CPA in Canada, that's equivalent to chartered accountant, that's a CPA. They evaluated my college transcript, and they said I'm only a high school equivalent. They won't even give me credit for college, and they were asking me to go through 4 school of school again. 4 years. That means I just wasted 4 years. I don't have 4 years to waste. So I challenged them and I said, why don't you let me sit for the exam? If I pass, give me the license. If I don't, I'll go back to school. They said, no, you have to go back to school. Very open discrimination. When they advertise, they say 4 years of Canadian experience, 5 years of Canadian experience. Everything is Canadian. So I got frustrated and I said, there's so much discrimination in Canada. When the time came, I had to make a decision whether to come to the US or Canada. I said, Canada is not the future for me. Don't get me wrong, I love Canada. It is so clean. I like the environment. It's really great. It's just the discrimination aspect that I feel I will not have a future in Canada. I sent my transcript of record to the Department of Education here in Pennsylvania. They evaluated it and they said I am a Bachelor of Science in Commerce equivalent in the United States. I said, that's great. Canada, I'm only a high school graduate. Okay? So I decided I will go to Canada instead. 1 year exactly after I joined the company, General Tire and Rubber Company, I went to the United States. Got married in the US. Sent a letter to the immigration office seeking permission to stay because I got married and my wife is here in the US. They sent a letter back to me and it was approved. I can wait for my green card in the US, but during this time I cannot leave the country. And I think it took, I can't remember if it's 10 or 15 years. Maybe I would say maybe 10 years, a little bit more than 10 years. I had to wait for the green card to be processed. So for 10 years we cannot leave the country. I cannot even go back to Canada. So we are sort of imprisoned here in the United States. But we were happy. We were happy. So in the US, I started looking for a job and I received 2 offers in the same day. One with a laundromat and another one with a food service company. Laundromat offered me $12,000 a year. That was big money at the time. And the food service company offered me 8. The laundromat is general accounting. Food service company is tax. And I said, I really need a tax experience. General accounting is the same, whether it's here in the Philippines, Canada, or whatever. But tax is specific to each country. And I knew nothing about taxes. So I said, I think I will need that. So I took the lower paying job, 8,000 instead of 12. I joined the company, and I'll mention the name of the company, it's ARA Services Company. And I was with them for 5 years, but about 3 to 5 months after I joined them, there was a corporate-wide evaluation, job evaluation. We were all interviewed, all the employees were interviewed, and they upped my salary to $18,000 a year. Can you imagine if I joined the laundromat at 12, and then I did not get the tax experience that I needed? Okay, so that's my first job, ARA. I tried to sit for the exam, but at the time they required you to be a US citizen. So I couldn't. I had to wait. And by the way, at the time, my mission, my objective is to be a manager at the age of 30. That was my ambition at the time, to be a manager in a corporation at the age of 30. That's it. 4 years after I joined the company ARA, the Pennsylvania state eliminated the citizenship requirement to be able to sit for a CPA exam to get the license. So I sat for the exam. Of course, I had to review about 6 months because at that point I had been away several years. So I had to review for about 6 months, and then I sat for the exam and I passed it. So at that point I became a CPA, and I tried to pursue other jobs, and I applied in one of the positions at ARA. Lo and behold, I was declined. I went to the personnel department, human resource, and I asked why. And they said, well, because there is a communication issue. There is a communication problem. I said, I was not even interviewed. How could you say there was a communication issue? Communication is talking. Did you find any communication issue with me? I was not interviewed. How can they draw that conclusion? This is discrimination. That's what I said. And as soon as I mentioned that, people started running around. The legal department called me to interview me, blah, blah, blah. So I interviewed with the legal department, and I said, don't you worry. I am not going to sue, because if you don't want me, I don't want the company. I am out of here. So in few months, I interviewed at Sunoco, Sun Oil Company, and I was offered a job there, so I left. But when I was offered a job at Sunoco, I asked them one question. Before I accept this job, let me ask you this. Are you hiring me to fill your quota requirement for an immigrant or a foreigner to join this company? And they said, absolutely not. I said, well, I just want to be sure, because I want to be hired by the company because of my capability, not because I'm a foreigner. No. You can have all opportunity here that you want. We are hiring you because you are the best man for the job. I asked that question before I accepted the job. So I got the job exactly 1 year after I got the tax manager position. I mean, not tax manager, but tax accountant position in that company. I interviewed for another position in a subsidiary of the same company, and that is an accounting manager. I achieved my objective at the age of 27. Okay? And from that point on, it just kept on going and going and going until I became a president and CEO of the company. I was very aggressive. When my boss, VP of Finance, left, I went to the president and I said, I want that job. Can you imagine that? I was that aggressive. I want the job. This guy said to me, there is no doubt in my mind you can perform in that job. You can do that job. Here is one dilemma. You are so young, and these other subsidiary vice presidents will be reporting to you. And when you tell them something, what are they going to say? Who's this punk telling me what to do? I was upset, and at first I was thinking, this is age discrimination. But the more I thought about it, I admired him. I said, he knows I can sue him for this. But why should I? He was being honest. He told me the truth. And he's right. He said, I will be managing these people who are much older than me, and they'll say, what does this guy know? He's so young. Now, don't get me wrong, that president was very young himself. Very young, and he's from an Ivy League. Everybody in this company was an Ivy League graduate. I'm the only one who's not. Okay? And more than that, I'm a foreigner. Okay? They don't know me. But this guy said to me, you cannot do it for now, but I will let you know when the time comes that you're ready. So I said, he is right, and I just have to accept that. I just have to accept that. Now, here's another opportunity that came. One of the subsidiaries had a big problem. They hired 2 consultants to find out what the problem is. And they both came back, and the consultants are like Big 8 at the time, Big 8 firm, 2 Big 8 firms, consulting company, to troubleshoot the company and let us know what's wrong with that company. They can't. Now, at the time I was studying statistical sampling technique to evaluate certain things. And I said, I think I can do this. I talked to the president again. And I said, why don't you give me a shot? Send me to the subsidiary and let me see what I can do to find out. No promises, but I will try. And this guy liked that approach, that I'm aggressive enough to offer that. And he said to me, yeah, okay, go ahead. How much time do you need? I said, probably 3-4 days. So I went down there 3-4 days. I selected samples. To cut the long story short, I used a statistical sampling technique to diagnose what the problem is in the company. So I came back and I wrote a report, submitted the report to management, and what my recommendation is. The president looked at the report and they said, 2 high-powered consulting companies told me they cannot fix it. They'll have to do the inventory, but they will not know what to do, blah, 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 blah. And who's this punk, if I may use the word that he used, to tell us that this is the problem and here's the solution? So he asked another VP who's an Ivy League graduate also. I can remember one is from Princeton, one is from University of Pennsylvania, another one is from Harvard. High-powered people. Ask him to interview me on what I did and let him know his opinion. So he called me into the conference room and we had a meeting. I explained to him what I did and the rationale behind what I did. And then he went back to the president and gave his report. And he said, I'm amazed. This guy is an accountant, but he used the engineering approach. These are all, by the way, these people are all engineers who are Ivy League people. They're all engineers. And he said, I can't believe that this guy was able to troubleshoot this, and I do agree with his findings. And the most important thing is he did not use the accounting approach. He used an engineering approach diagnosing the problem. Lo and behold, from that point on, I became the company's troubleshooter. Every time there's a problem, send Danny. Send Danny. Okay? I became the troubleshooter. And at some point, this guy who interviewed me, he was running another subsidiary and his company had a big problem. I went there to troubleshoot. I was then a troubleshooter at that point. I troubleshooted it and I issued a report which is not in his favor, and he disagreed because he's biased, but I understand. So we said, well, the only way to do this is this. Wait until the end of the year when we take a physical inventory. I estimate that you will have about $500,000 of inventory write down. That means it will hit the bottom line, $500,000. Okay, let's see if that happens. I don't believe it. He said, I don't believe it. Well, guess what? Lo and behold, at the end of the year, we took a physical inventory. There goes the $500,000 write down. So my credibility was just established at that point that I became a troubleshooter. Worse than that, not only a troubleshooter, but I became the hatchet man. Every time Danny goes to the company, the problem is discovered, people are fired. So at that point, nobody wanted to hire me, to promote me. Nobody. okay? Because they were all scared that I am the CEO's guy, that I am the CEO's spy, okay? And that there's no way that's gonna happen. So anyway, the president then got moved to another level in the company, and this company I was with was reporting now to him, although he's now the group VP at the parent company. And another company reporting to him was a trucking company. So he called me in. He called me and said, Danny, you're now ready. Why don't you assume the position of VP of Corporate Development? So I became a VP of Corporate Development of this trucking company. By the way, the other company I was with is a distribution company, okay? Nuts and bolts, plumbing supplies, glass, okay? Distribution. The second job I had was with a trucking company, and lo and behold, I found out that the reason they want me there is to troubleshoot what's going on with that trucking company. So I went there, I did my investigation, I did my analysis. The company was doing a plan, and this is interesting. I got involved in the planning process, not as a doer, but only as an observer. And I looked at the entire plan that was prepared by the president, and I made my own analysis. It's called the break-even analysis. Break-even analysis, okay? So I inserted one chart in this thick package, break-even analysis. This president then reviewed it and said, okay, let's take a look at your plan. So he was giving the presentation, and when that page was hit, okay, he went, let's say it's page 30. He got to page 31. He says, wait a minute, let's go back to page 30. That's the break-even analysis that I prepared. It shows that the company, for it to break even, will have to create a miracle. There is no way this company can be turned around. That's basically what it shows. And I prepared that only one schedule to highlight the problem. And it was picked up right away by the president's boss. So at that point, that company was shut down. Some were sold, some were closed down, and that's it. So what happened to my position? I became the accounting manager, financial manager of the parent company. That's where I was. Okay? And then eventually that company was also sold. I became jobless, and then I did my own consulting. And I went back to the distribution company, the one I was with before, and I was giving this presentation on the consulting work that I can do for them. And the president said, Danny, I'll offer you a job. And he said to me he did not realize that I have this sales capacity that I have. He thought I was just an accountant, period. And I was sitting right next to him at the time. And he said, you have the capacity to sell, but the only position I have open is VP of Finance. So I turned it down. And the people, of course I know the people because I used to work there, said to me, Danny, you make your own job. Why don't you take that position? I know you want to sell because you don't want accounting anymore, you want sales. But you go ahead and take that position. Just trust me. So I went with my gut and I said, okay, I'm going to take this job as long as I will be allowed to sell, because that's what I really want to do. He said, oh, you can sell as much as you want. That's what he said. Well, guess what? That's what he expected me to do, but he's not authorized to get another salesperson. But he has an opening for a VP of sales. So the VP of sales position, I sort of delegated to someone in Arkansas. So I just managed him. And meanwhile, I did nothing but sell. And he found that I can open doors at the executive level. Just like that. I usually would spend 1 week in the office And for 3 weeks during that month, I will be out from state to state to state selling the concept of outsourcing inventory management. So at that point, he changed my position and also made me the president of one of the subsidiaries, and that is in Mexico. So I was in Mexico for 5 or 6 years, and that startup company started with 0 sales, and I was able to grow it to about 14 million in sales in 5 years. On top of that, I was also given the responsibility of managing the engineering company. So now that's two engineering and inventory management company. So I became a president and CEO of this company, and what I did is I merged the two to take advantage of some tax benefit. I saved about $1 million by doing that. So that's what I did. So until the time I didn't realize that, my objective is just to be a manager at the age of 30. I became manager at the age of 27, and then it just went on and on and on. So that's the story of my life. Then when we sold the company, we sold the Mexican company, which, by the way, I tried to buy myself, the company, but it's so hard to get financing in Mexico City. So I lived in Mexico, commuting every Friday, Monday and Friday. I will stay on a weekend here in Pennsylvania, and I will go and work in Mexico. And sometimes instead of me coming home, I would ask my wife to come and join me, and then we go around Mexico. So we have traveled around Mexico also, in addition to traveling around the United States while I was holding that other job. So after that is real estate. I went to real estate after I left Mexico and I came back. I went into real estate because I wanted to leave something to my children, and I was very, very successful. I became a part of the people at the top, the chairman's circle in the company. At the time it was Prudential, and I did that for 15 years, but I was working really, really hard for the first 5 to 10 years. But as I was growing the business, my children were not really interested. So, if my children are not interested, what am I doing this for? So my last 5 years I spent specializing in short sales. That is people who are getting into trouble, getting close to bankruptcy, and that is now, although it's still real estate work, it's more negotiation. I became a negotiator with the bankers to let them sell the property at much lower price. So I asked them to take some write-off, because even if they foreclose on the property, they will also absorb that write-off. So I'm relieving them of the responsibility and the headache of owning the property to sell. So that's what I specialized in, and I did that nationwide. I had clients in some other parts of the United States. Usually real estate is just localized, okay? And I also help agents and clients of other people in other companies outside of Prudential. So I became known. I even wrote a book on short sales, and I hit it right, because sales was really good, because almost nobody heard of short sale yet. So I became a specialist in short sale. And then two years ago, I decided it's time for me to retire. So that's the story of my life. From graduating from school, to summarize, I became, I forgot, I work at SGV, CSF Gores Vilayo and Company in the Philippines, which is the big one in Asia, not the big six, the big one. And then I came to General Tire and Rubber Company as an assistant chief accountant. Then I went to ARA for about five years or so as a tax accountant. Then moved to Sunoco for Sun Oil Company for 1 year in the tax department, and then moved to the subsidiary of Sunoco as a not tax manager, but accounting manager. And then I became a troubleshooter. And then I did consulting work when I was out of work, in transition from the trucking company. And then I went back to Sun Distributors as VP of Finance, but actually working in sales, and then eventually becoming the president and CEO of a subsidiary in Mexico City. Mexico, not United States, Mexico City. And after that, I did real estate for about 15 years, and I got my broker's license. And then here I am. I retired. Oh, and now I'm doing YouTube. So I was thinking of doing real estate in the Philippines, but I said, no way. I'm not going to go through the congestion in Manila, showing houses and things like that. No, I'd rather do what I want, which is traveling the island, getting to know the island, and maybe some nearby Asian countries, and maybe doing some YouTube video since I enjoy that anyway, and in the process be able to help some of my kababayans. So that's it. So I hope this serves your purpose. I had a change of heart in doing this thing because it's something interesting anyway, but something that probably will not be beneficial to everyone, especially the older people who are the ones watching this video. It will probably be beneficial and incentivize people who are just starting in business or starting in school or getting out of school, or maybe is already in the process but doesn't quite know what to do. Something I will say is this in parting, okay? Trust yourself, be aggressive, stand on your own 2 feet, do your research, and go for it. Okay? Thank you very much, and until next. Goodbye now.